I hereby introduce to you Mr. Michael Veazey.
Hi, welcome to Amazing FBA. This is your host, Michael Veazey speaking, and this podcast episode is brought to you by Reliable Income, led by Adam Hudson. Reliable Income is an Amazon community and course, and Adam Hudson is an Amazon seller. He's doing well over 7 figures a year now, and also a very straightforward Australian. And in a sea of hyper Americans, that is quite a refreshing change. Adam will tell you it straight when it comes to how much money you need to private label, which is measured in the thousands of dollars these days, not the hundreds, and how long it takes to really get a private label product off the ground when you're working alongside the day job, which again is measured in months rather than weeks. Now, alongside that, Adam, however, is a very, very positive guy, and he has a lot to offer in terms of getting a really great positioning on Amazon for your products. So high quality products selling at a really good price and keeping the competition at bay, which it's never been a smarter time to adopt that strategy than in 2018, when Me Too or Cheap are just going to be trashed by the Amazon crowd or have their price disappear into the floor overnight. So I really, really think his approach is sustainable. Hence, I think that Reliable Income is a very good word for his type of training. If you want to find out more about Adam, as I said, amazingfba.com/Adam. If you want to find out more about his training and or take the 4-part video training course, which is free, go to amazingfba.com/reliable, RELIABLE. Just for more transparency, I am an affiliate of that, so that will buy more than a coffee, as is the traditional affiliate sales. But what it will do is help cover some of the costs of running the podcast, which hopefully benefits you. Some of the software that I have to use to keep in touch with the guests, and my beloved and long-suffering editor, Daniel, who is worth his weight in gold, but I have got to pay him because even editors have to eat as well. So I've got to pay for blogging, podcast hosting, the rest of it. So that helps to cover some of my costs there. And I hope you'll check that out. Now on with the show. Well, we're getting into quite advanced strategies, really. I mean, I suppose we probably ought to think about some slightly more mundane things in terms of, for most people, these are not likely to be, so much. They're not likely to be doing such sophisticated things to prevent suspension. But we've talked about, the possible risks. Let's talk about how to prevent those things in a way that means you can still actually do business rather than sit in the corner of your room and quake with fear before the guys crash through the SWAT team crashes through the windows on rappelling ropes with armed with submachine guns. Presumably most of us aren't going to experience that. But what do we need to do to stay safe whilst actually, going about our business?
All right. The Billy basics are, one, stay on top of webinars like this and read the forums to see where the hot spots are, and then avoid it. If all of a sudden you have a great opportunity to buy a container full of Nike Air Jordans, do some reading about Nike and Air Jordans. See if other sellers are having problems. Source your goods from reputable places, because the more reputable your distributor is, the less chance you have that they're selling you something that a customer is going to complain of. If you're noticing that the packaging doesn't match the current retail packaging, stay away from it or list it as used. You're not going to make as much money or sell as much of it, but it'll be a little bit safer. I think those are the hot things. You really have to put your time in before you buy your products to see what it is you're buying, who you're buying from, and then what's the documentation behind it. And just do reading. Spend time online looking at the forum. Amazon sellers are on the micro scale very, very secretive of what they're selling, but on the macro, they're very communicative. So go on the forums, read it, listen to webinars, do some research. You can even just, if you're doing retail arbitrage and you see something in a great store, go back to your car, get on your phone, and take a look. And if you don't find problems, then go back inside and buy. But that's really the basics of avoiding problems.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that particularly deals specifically with the inauthentic claim stuff. Regarding order defect rate, is there a particularly best practice to avoid that as a suspension reason?
It all comes back to delivering a good product and making sure it's packaged well and arriving not damaged, because customer complains, your order defect rate's going to skyrocket. Amazon demands sellers to be practically perfect. And that's what you really need to do. So you want to make sure your packaging is good, your product matches what's being sold online, what they'd see in a brick and mortar store. Make sure you're using good shipping, follow the rules in terms of when you're going to upload your tracking and that sort of thing. If you're not ready yet to handle those issues yourself, go FBA. You don't have to stay FBA. It's a great tool for a lot of sellers, but you really want to make sure that you're on the right side of the learning curve to avoid the problems.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, that was one of the reasons that a member of my mastermind got suspended, because she and I worked together to set up, try and get a product launched. But I was unaware that she was going to do FBM, as in fulfilled by merchant, first, and was working with people who'd never worked with Amazon before and just didn't understand the importance of the speed and didn't communicate with her about it. And lo and behold, immediate suspension because the orders were fantastically late. So that is one simple way to get yourself suspended. And as you said, the simple hedge against that is very, very simple. Use FBA, as in fulfilled by Amazon. So in other words, you send your products to Amazon's warehouses and you don't touch them once you've sent them to Amazon. Once they get fulfilled. I mean, that's the simple version for me. I think is just don't get clever and do stuff yourself when you don't know what you're doing. I think that one's extremely good advice and very simple. Fortunately,
I also recommend that if you're not doing private label, that you start looking into it, because retail arbitrage, online arbitrage seems to be on its way out. So if you're already doing private label, expand into it. If you're not yet there, start, because that's the way of the future. And there was a hockey player, Gretzky, and his skill was know where the hockey puck's going to be, not where it's been. It's where it's going. And that's where you have to start aiming your sights for, next year after, Q3 and 4. That's what you need to look at. Right now, your business is taking care of itself. Look where you're going in the future.
Okay, well, that sounds like excellent advice. And that begs the question then of where do you think then, CJ, in 2018 that Amazon is going? What are the trends? You've already mentioned retail arbitrage and online arbitrage are out. What makes you feel that that's happening?
Well, it's been going on for about, I'd say, 2 years or so now, where Amazon, the consumer is always top of the pecking order, top of the food chain. Then it was brands, and sellers are, replaceable, a dime a dozen. So if they're protecting brands, and sellers need to develop their own brand, and that means private label. And we advise sellers all the time, what are your interests? What do you know about? And to go into private label for those types of products is you can take what's on the market and improve upon it and make it your own. So I think as of now, that's the way to go. There's still a ton of money to be made in retail arbitrage. I'm not telling anyone to run for the hills and have a panic sale. Retail arbitrage, people are still making tons and tons and tons of money. But again, you want to start preparing for what the future is. I think it's going to continue to go to a brand-centric model. I think the number of sellers doing retail arbitrage and the number of sellers selling other brands' products are going to continue to decrease. I think Amazon has become more and more strict on their invoice review. I do like a lot of things that Amazon's doing. Like they're now doing a pre-suspension plans of action where Amazon will send, hey, we see you're having a problem with such and such. Can you send us a plan of action to address how you're going to fix it without suspending the seller? I like how Amazon has shifted a bit on their IP, their intellectual property complaints, where they'll tell the seller, instead of just suspending them, they'll tell them to reach out to the brand, and vice versa for the brand to reach out to the seller to try and work things out. And those things protect sellers a bit. Is it a shift business? No, it's sort of been a light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to these issues.
So tell us a bit more about that, because that sounds like, as you said, a light at the end of the tunnel, and for once, a move in an Amazon policy or way of doing things anyway that is actually kinder to sellers, not harder, which is very rare. So tell us a bit more about that. The pre-suspension plan of action, that basically means they think you're heading towards a level where you'd be unacceptable and they would suspend you, for example, for order defect rates. How does that work? And is there a good approach to handling that situation? What's the best practice there?
The email looks very similar to a suspension, only you're not suspended. It's almost the exact same email asking for a plan of action for one product or one issue or another. And you're writing basically the same document where you're talking about the root cause of the problem. You're talking about your corrective action if you had a customer complain, and the long-term changes to your business. So you're doing practically the same thing, only you're not under that awful pressure of being suspended. Many sellers, private label and otherwise, their money's tied up in inventory. Their inventory is over at FBA, and their accounts receivable with Amazon. So when they suspend you, you lose your inventory, you lose your ability to do business, and they're going to hold your money for 90 days. And you have no place else to go. So the pre-suspension plan of action, I think, is a really great opportunity for sellers to address problems without having been suspended. And I think it's really a good thing that Amazon has done. I'm not into Amazon bashing. I think it provides millions of people with tremendous opportunities. And this is a good turn. This is a good turn of events into doing pre-suspension plans of action.
So how common is that in your experience so far? Well, again, this may be a dumb question because you only deal with the problem cases, I guess, but is that on the increase relative to the suspension, the straightforward suspension, and then the demand for the plan of action?
It's still very, very, very uncommon as far as we think. We're going to start seeing them more and more as the weeks and the months go by. But we've had a few, and it seems to be very similar to when they changed the dashboard and gave you your account health. Maybe it's following along that line, where they're going to let sellers have a little bit more notice of problems and not just cut their legs off. But still very, very rare, but we think it's going to grow.
Okay, that sounds a lot like a hopeful thing. And presumably then, if you get a notice from Amazon saying that you've got to give them a plan of action, which for those who haven't been suspended or heard about it, is basically your way of saying how you're going to deal with the problems you've created. Is that right? Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, it's more so. It used to be, the train of thought used to be that if you had to write a plan of action, you had to admit to doing something wrong. I think that's entirely wrong. If anybody tells you that, I'd recommend you don't do it. A plan of action to me is more about explaining to Amazon how you dealt with the problem immediately and how you're changing your business so that they won't have a problem with you again in the future. It's all about being a better business person, being a better seller. And in every single business, you can always get better. So that's what a plan of action is. If you go back and you list the people who tell you have to admit doing something wrong, and Amazon ends up turning you down, you've shot yourself in the foot by admitting to doing something wrong, because now you've given Amazon the leverage that they can argue against being compelled to reinstate your selling privileges. So don't do that. And plans of action are all about being a better business person. And you got to tell you something, the self-evaluation that you do, this deep dive using Amazon's lingo, is good. It helps you become a better, more efficient, more profitable business.
So just coming back to picking up on what you were just saying, because I don't think we've made this clear enough. There is a mechanism if you get it right, and if you don't shoot yourself in the foot, as you said earlier on, by admitting to doing something wrong, which you simply haven't done, then mechanism for compelling Amazon to reinstate your account. Do I hear you correctly?
Yes. If you go through all the levels, and it's much faster, it's cheaper, it's more efficient in terms of getting back online, getting your money back, getting your distribution, freeing up your inventory, is to use the program Amazon has. Product quality, seller support, get your plan of action out. Usually they'll ask for more information, give them the information that they want, be concise, be persuasive. And if you fail, then you go to a policy team. You're kind of doing the same thing. If that fails, you go to the Bezos escalation team and write to them. If all of those things fail and you just don't think you're getting a fair shake, in the US, you can file for arbitration with the American Arbitration Association. It's relatively quick, takes about 3 months from soup to nuts. I don't know if that's a saying in the UK.
Not really, but we hear it a lot.
From beginning to end. Okay, roughly 3 months from my phone ringing or the email coming in until a decision from that arbitrator. You're looking at roughly 3 months, as long as you stay within what they call the expedited process. And you're going to go through an arbitrator, which is similar to court, only it's much, much faster and much, much cheaper. And you're going to ask that arbitrator to direct Amazon to reinstate your selling privileges, or to reimburse you for the inventory that they've seized, or return your money to you, or whatever the problem is.
Interesting. And also, it's good to know that there is a way to, a sort of buck stops here way of doing things that is actually outside of the Amazon universe, because it often feels like we as sellers are fighting Amazon. So Amazon is both the enemy in that situation, or the opponent of our business wealth and well-being.
Judge and jury.
Judge and jury. But yeah, it's like Amazon is the prosecution and is the judge and jury. So it's nice to know there is literally one, if not a judge and jury, but a judge that you can go to, presumably, or something like a judge that's outside of Amazon. But the other thing that strikes me is when you said, well, it's relatively quick, it takes 3 months. I'm like, wow, 3 months suspended feels like a lifetime if your money and inventory is tied up there. So I guess that's all relative to the legal process that it's fast,
Yeah,
right? Is
the
that what
legal
you mean?
process here in the States, you're looking at, a year, 2 years, 3 years. And again, your normal suspension should take roughly a week, give or take, sometimes faster, sometimes a bit longer. We've heard of suspensions handled by some of these consultants that go out, 2 or 3 months. Also, you might get a feeling that you're going to continuously strike out. You may decide to file for arbitration sooner rather than later. We think it's just, from our perspective, it's a thing you do last. If you have failed at every single level and you still think Amazon should reinstate you, that's the only path that you have. If you're selling in the UK or France or Germany, you don't have that benefit. You have to go to court in Luxembourg. But if you're selling in the US, you can take the decision right out of Amazon's hands.
And presumably that would be true for a UK-based company or a UK-based individual, although it's unlikely you're probably going to be selling as an individual in the US. But I mean, would it be true for those people as well?
Yes, you can still go to arbitration. We're very, very careful in the documents that we write to demonstrate to the American Arbitration Association that this is an American business and selling in America, the customers in America, the products in FBA warehouses in America, because you want to avoid getting kicked out of arbitration. You also want to avoid the American Arbitration Association deeming your case an international dispute, because it makes your costs skyrocket and it slows the process down.
That makes a lot of sense. So if I have most of my friends, again, a couple of friends are doing big numbers, have an LLC, even though they're British people, they are normally with business partners, have an LLC in America, i.e., for those who haven't done it, a legally limited corporation, is it? It's some kind of company.
What is it? Company.
Limited liability company. Okay, so it's basically like a private limited company in the UK equivalent. But if most of us, me included, would have a UK limited company, and I wanted to take Amazon to court to reinstate my Amazon.com account, I was only selling products to the US consumers via Amazon. It was only stored in the US FBA. Then would I have a case for it being a domestic dispute, or would that be an international one?
We would phrase it at all possible as a domestic dispute. We might do it in the name of the storefront and try and hide the fact that it's really owned by an international entity. If it came out, we would still focus that you're using FBA. It's American warehouses sold to American consumers. And we do everything we can to avoid that it being labeled an international dispute.
Makes a lot of sense. And as you said, anyway, that is a last ditch attempt kind of thing. And therefore, it's probably going to come up pretty rarely, I should imagine, because, as you said, working within the Amazon system, it sounds like you have, most of your successes within that system anyway, eventually.
It's where you want to be. It's faster and it's cheaper. If Amazon's holding, $100,000 or 100,000 pounds of your money, or 100,000 euros, the fastest way to get that distribution is to get Amazon to reinstate you amicably.
Makes total sense.
The goal of most sellers is to get back to selling.
Absolutely, yeah. Amicable's nearly always faster, right? In just about anything in life. Let's talk a little bit about those IP issues and the change that they've instated. Is that sort of across the board, or is that also a rare thing that instead of Amazon sort of shooting first and then saying, right, now we've had a complaint, intellectual property infringement, and you better sort it out, and then we'll reinstate you. They're now telling you to get in touch with the complainant and not suspending you. Is that right?
Yes, it's growing. It's still in the vast minority, but we are seeing it more and more. Maybe someone is actually looking at the complaints at Amazon now, where before it felt like there was absolutely no gatekeeper. But it's still a minority, but it's definitely a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
That's good to know. So if you did happen to get a message like that, rather than the old, you've been your normally it's product suspension in my experience, but I mean your product has been suspended or possibly your account. If you get something from Amazon saying you're at risk of suspension due to alleged IP infringements, then what would you say is the right policy or the right action at that point?
What you want to do is try and get that complainant to withdraw the complaint. Whether the ASIN is down, your account is down or not, because nobody knows how many complaints an account can withstand before it gets suspended. As soon as you get that notice, you want to write right back to who made the complaint that you received it. You take it seriously. You're looking into it, and you'll be back in touch. You don't want to blow it off. You don't want to bury your head in the sand. So you want to respond right away. Then you really want to look into it. And you say, well, am I violating anybody's intellectual property rights? And if you are, you want to resolve it. And if you're not, you want to resolve it. Like, no matter how you slice it, you want to get that complaint withdrawn. A lot of sellers in health and beauty products are making deals with the brands that they'll agree not to sell that product anymore, that brand, if they withdraw the complaint. And we used to be in favor of that, and now we're kind of reeling back a bit, because what's happening is before you know it, you've made that same deal with a couple of hundred brands, and now you're having a problem finding goods to sell.
So explain that a little bit more for me, because that's not an area that I've really sold in very much.
Okay.
I certainly haven't sold supplements. So can
Let's
you
say you're
break that
selling
down?
health and beauty, shampoo, conditioners, skin products, lotions, potions, whatever. And a company called Johnny B says you can't sell our products, and they make a complaint against you because you're not a registered Johnny B. They call them ambassadors. I think it's mostly BS. And so as a seller, you say, well, we're not making $1 million selling it. We'll just promise not to sell anymore. And then you do that with Johnny B, and then you do it with Revlon, and then you do it with Chanel, and then you do it with Epiance, and then you do it with all these other brands. And before you know it, you've made deals on so many different brands that you're limiting what you can sell when you weren't doing anything wrong at all in the first place. So as a business person, you have to start thinking about whether you want to use other leverage to get those complaints withdrawn, or you still want to make those quick and easy deals to get the complaint taken away. But it's something you got to think about, because how many brands can you agree not to sell before you start running out of inventory?
So that's for the retail arbitrages or the online arbitrages. If you're selling a private label product, then presumably the intellectual property claim is around not so much the selling rights or privileges, but around the actual design patents or possibly even trademarks, I suppose. How would you approach being accused of one of those violations?
If you're a private label seller, before you have your product manufactured at any scale, you should have someone do the research to make sure you're not violating anybody's patent or mark. There's a humidifier sold in the United States. It's in the shape of a teardrop, and it's very, very unique. They have what's called trade dress, and many sellers have been suspended for selling a similar shaped product. You just need to do some research to make sure you're really not copying or violating anybody's rights. You can do it yourself. You can hire someone to do it for you, but before you invest and you have 20,000 units manufactured, you just want to take a look to see whether your factory really just took the design owned by somebody else and is now selling it to you. It happens all the time. And a lot of factories will tell you that they own the rights when they really don't. Generally, factories don't own the rights to any designs. They're building things that were designed by others. They're not in the design business. They're in the manufacturing business. So you need to take some time. We provide that as a service, but you can also do it yourself. The United States Patent and Trademark Office, USPTO.org, is a website right out of the 1990s, which it's easy to navigate, but it's not really visually appealing.
Yeah, I can attest to that. Yeah, it's certainly a lot easier than the British equivalent. I can't remember even which that is now, but the UK equivalent is harder to use and feels less comprehensive. I'm not sure I'd trust it quite as much as the American one. So if we wanted to hire an attorney, you guys or whoever, to do a search for us, what sort of costs are we looking at? Are we talking thousands or hundreds?
No, hundreds. We generally charge $750 US. Depending on what comes out of our president's mouth and the exchange rate, that'll affect how much it would cost someone in the UK. I recognize it's not nothing, it's a significant amount of money, but it's also, we try to keep it priced in a way that your average seller can afford it, as a way of sort of insuring themselves against buying a product that's going to create a problem for them.
Yeah, certainly. If you're going to be getting thousands or tens of thousands of units manufactured, I mean, that really is a small price to pay, I think, for that. I mean, as you say, with people who are doing smaller runs, which a lot of people classically with starting off in private label would be doing, then I guess they can maybe take their chances as long as they've done the USPTO search. But I guess it would probably, if they're going to scale up to any significant level, right, it would still be worth them coming to a lawyer to get a thorough patent search done, right?
Well, I think so. I think so. What we'll be able to tell you is that is clearly a product you need to stay away from. This is a product that seems really, really clean, or it's somewhere between the two. And these are some of the things you just want to think about as a business person, what you want to do. You like fidget spinners, right? It didn't take a rocket science to identify that somebody else owned the right to it. But a lot of sellers made millions and millions of dollars selling those stupid toys. So that was probably worthwhile. But again, each seller needs to evaluate the risk versus reward themselves.
Yeah, and I think you've just put in a nutshell what all really smart business people do. I mean, I was speaking to a very old friend here in Hampstead in London, and he's been investing in the City of London for about 60 years. He's a pretty old guy now, just retired, but he's really very calmly sat down and evaluated risk and reward in investments for 60 odd years. So I mean, that's the ultimate in business thinking, right? And I think actually that's across the board, whether you're in Amazon or anywhere else. So I think that's probably quite a nice place to leave it, except one more little thing, which I believe that you've written a book, which is good stuff. Tell us about your book.
All right. The book, there were two other books out there. One is a couple 100 pages long. It's been out for many years, and the information is just dated and old, and it's a lot of fluff. There was another book that I thought was good. It's also now a bit dated. And we just used our perspective to write the latest information for sellers. It's the 2017, 2018 edition. We call it Your Guide to Amazon Suspensions. I just happen to have a copy next to me, just by happenstance. So this is it. It may come out the opposite of, when you see it on your screen. We lowered the price because the goal of the book really is to pay it forward. We want Amazon sellers to be armed with as much information as possible to handle things themselves. It tells you how to write a plan of action, how to avoid needing to write a plan of action. It addresses the different types of IP issues that exist. And so we wrote it. The goal is to get the information out there. We did it through CreateSpace, which is an Amazon-based company, and therefore they limit how low you can price it. So we lowered it the absolute lowest that we can online to $6.20, which is the lowest they'll let us do it. Originally it was higher because we had color illustrations, so we redid it in black and white. And if anybody should if they email us, email me or you, we'll send copies of the book to you, Michael, and then you can distribute it. All you gotta do is cover the shipping and handling so I can get it over to the UK. And we just think it has the latest information. There's like no fluff. It is stripped down to the basics, what you need to know to avoid suspensions and how to get your account, your ASINs back.
Fantastic. Well, that's really, really good, because obviously these podcasts that we've done with you are really helpful for people. And I know that a lot of people that I've spoken to respect your knowledge and found it helpful or reassuring. Or, of course, I've sent clients to you who not because I don't make any commission, just to be clear to anyone who's listening or watching, that it's because I know that they're going to get dealt with well and that their account has got the best possible chance of reinstatement. So great to have your knowledge put down in a concrete format. In terms of the logistics of that, I just say anyone who wants to get the book via me, just go to www.amazingfba.com/CJ, C for car, J for Joanna. I'm not sure what that stands for. And,
it's actually for J-A-Y.
I suppose so, yeah. So amazingfba.com/CJ, and I'll put a little sign up thing there that if you're interested in getting the book, that you can just join the email list there. And when I've got enough people there, we'll get CJ to send over a sort of bulk of those books, and I'll distribute them to people. Probably we'll do a special deal for my members of my mastermind, because I think that especially the people in the 10K collective doing big numbers are the most at risk and have the most at stake. So I think they need your book as soon as possible. So thank you very much for that, CJ. Looking forward to reading the book. And it just remains for me to say thank you very much for coming on. I know you're a busy guy at this time of year. Everyone's getting back to work, and suspensions are flying around and goodness knows what. So thank you very much. Any parting words of advice that you think is the best practices in 2018 for keeping your account safe?
Wow. I got to say, sourcing your products, private label sellers, really make it your own. Make some change, make some improvement. You'll avoid patent claims, trademark claims, design claims. Really make it your own. I believe sellers sellers should get into things that they know and use and love themselves and follow their interests. Also, while we deal with the problems, always recognize that Amazon has presented probably the greatest opportunity for everyday people to get into business and compete with the big boys. So it's a huge opportunity. We're not about Amazon bashing. We're here to help you continue to sell and sell more. So just keep at it. I think it's a great course to be on.
Excellent words. Thank you very, very much, CJ, for coming on, and look forward to reading the book. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate being on.
Great to see you again. Cheers. Goodbye.